Imagine a moment when everything you've built, decades of sweat, sacrifice, and ambition, teeters on the edge of collapse. One phone call, one misstep, and it's all gone. That's where Michael Bennett found himself, pacing the polished floors of his corner office on the 45th floor of Bennett Enterprises in downtown Chicago. His voice cracked as he yelled into the phone. How can this be happening now? Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled up, and a Chinese delegation stepped out, their tailored suits catching the autumn light. In 15 minutes, they'd be in his boardroom to finalize a $200 million deal. A deal that could catapult his company into the global tech market. But the translator, the one person who could bridge the language gap, had just canceled. A family emergency unavoidable. Michael's heart pounded. Without perfect communication, this deal was dead. He loosened his tie, sweat beading on his brow. 20 years of building this empire, and it could crumble over a language barrier. His assistant, Sarah, stood at the door, phone still pressed to her ear. I've called every translator in the city, she said, her voice tight. No one can handle a deal this big on such short notice. The Chinese executives were known for their precision. They'd walk away from a meeting run through apps or gestures. Michael's mind raced, grasping for solutions that didn't exist. Then a quiet voice broke the chaos. Excuse me, Mr. Bennett, but I speak fluent Mandarin. The room froze. All eyes turned to Emily Carter, a 28-year-old janitor, standing in her navy blue uniform, a cleaning cloth in her hand. She'd been wiping down a side table, unnoticed as always. For 3 years, she'd cleaned these offices, invisible to the executives who made million-dollar decisions. Sarah laughed, sharp and nervous. Emily, this isn't a game. We're talking about a $200 million contract. Michael stared at her, skepticism warring with desperation. You speak Mandarin, his voice was low, almost accusing. Mandarin, Cantonese, and some Taiwanese, Emily said, her gaze steady. I studied East Asian linguistics at Georgetown before I ended up here. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner. Michael's mind churned. Could he trust her? A janitor, of all people, in the most critical moment of his career. Sarah crossed her arms, her irritation clear. Michael, you can't seriously consider this. A cleaning lady in a boardroom, but there was something in Emily's posture, a quiet confidence that made him pause. Prove it, he said, his tone sharp. Say something in Mandarin. Emily took a deep breath and spoke, her words flowing with flawless precision. Women hen rongsing zai jili jiamian xuang women de hizuo nang de lai xuanjiang. Michael didn't understand a word, but the fluency, the authority in her voice, hit him like a wave. What did you say? He asked, still reeling. It's an honor to meet you here, and we hope our collaboration brings mutual success. Emily translated, calm as ever. It's a standard business greeting in Chinese culture, very respectful. Sarah's lips tightened. Michael, think about what the Chinese will say when they see a janitor at an executive meeting. For a moment, Emily's eyes flickered with something. Pain, maybe, or defiance. She'd heard worse over the years. 6 months ago, she'd caught Sarah muttering about that black girl who lingers near important meetings, thinking Emily wouldn't hear. She'd stayed silent then, but the words had burned. Michael made a snap decision, his gut overriding logic. You've got 15 minutes to get ready, he said, ignoring Sarah's glare. Find something appropriate and meet me in the boardroom. Emily nodded and left, her steps quick but controlled. Sarah leaned in, her voice a furious whisper. You're out of your mind. When this fails, it's your career. Michael didn't answer. He was too busy wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life, or if the most valuable person in the room had been under his nose all along. If stories like this speak to you, hit the like button and subscribe. There's more to come. The tension in the office was palpable as the clock ticked closer to the meeting. Michael stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Chinese delegation enter the lobby below. Their punctuality was a reminder of the stakes. Every detail mattered. He adjusted his cufflinks, trying to shake the image of Emily's navy uniform from his mind. Could she really pull this off? She'd been invisible for 3 years, blending into the background of his empire. Yet her voice, that steady Mandarin, had carried a weight he couldn't ignore. In the break room, Emily rummaged through a lost and found box, her hands trembling slightly. She found a black blazer and a pencil skirt left by a former receptionist. They weren't perfect, but they do. She twisted her hair into a neat bun, her reflection in a small mirror showing a woman she hadn't seen in years, not the janitor, but the scholar who'd once dreamed of diplomacy. Her mind flashed to her mother, who'd lost her job and health insurance during Emily's junior year at Georgetown. That's why she dropped out, taking this job to pay for her mom's diabetes treatment. 3 years of mopping floors, listening to executives strategize had taught her more than any classroom. She'd absorbed their deals, their tactics, their mistakes, especially Sarah's. Back in the office, Sarah was still on the phone, her tone clipped. Yes, I understand, but we need someone now. She hung up, exasperated, and turned to Michael. I hope you're ready for the fallout when this crashes. Michael's jaw tightened. He was gambling everything on a woman he'd never noticed before today. But something about Emily's eyes, sharp, unflinching, had convinced him to take the risk. She wasn't just a janitor. She was someone who'd been watching, learning, waiting. As the elevator dinged, signaling the delegation's arrival, Michael felt a surge of adrenaline. The boardroom was ready, its glass walls gleaming, a view of Lake Michigan stretching beyond. He straightened his tie, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. If Emily failed, the deal was lost. If she succeeded, it could change everything, not just for him, but for her. The door opened, and the Chinese executives entered, their faces composed but expectant. Michael greeted them with a practiced smile, his heart pounding. Emily wasn't here yet. He glanced at Sarah, who raised an eyebrow, her expression smug. Where is she? He muttered under his breath. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then, the door swung open again, and Emily stepped in, transformed. The blazer hugged her frame, the skirt professional but understated. She carried a notepad, her posture radiating calm. The room fell silent, the executives exchanging glances. Jesus, muttered Thomas, the CFO, his shock unguarded. Is that the same person? Sarah leaned toward an assistant. Dress up Cole all you want, it's still Cole. Michael ignored them, stepping forward. This is Emily Carter, our specialist for Asian markets. The lie came easily, but it felt right. The delegation's leader, Mr. Liu, bowed slightly. Emily returned the gesture, her Mandarin flawless as she spoke. It's an honor to meet you. Your punctuality reflects the discipline we admire in your culture. Mr. Liu's eyes widened, a faint smile breaking his stoic demeanor. The room exhaled. For now, the gamble was working. But Michael knew the real test was just beginning. The boardroom hummed with tension as the Chinese delegation settled into their seats, their sharp eyes scanning the room. Emily stood at Michael's side, her notepad clutched tightly, her heart a steady drumbeat beneath her calm exterior. She'd spent 3 years blending into the shadows of Bennett Enterprises, but now every gaze was on her. She could feel Sarah's stare, cold and cutting, from across the table. The assistant's lips curled slightly, as if she were waiting for Emily to stumble. You're out of your depth, Sarah's eyes seemed to say. Emily straightened her borrowed blazer, forcing herself to focus. She'd faced worse than skepticism, years of sidelong glances, whispered slights, and outright dismissals. This moment, though, was hers to seize. Mr. Liu began speaking, his Mandarin crisp and formal, outlining the terms of the 200 million deal. Emily translated effortlessly, her voice clear, capturing not just the words but the cultural weight behind them. Michael nodded along, his relief palpable, though his hands fidgeted under the table. The Chinese executives leaned forward, engaged, their initial surprise at Emily's presence giving way to respect. She caught a faint nod from Mr. Liu, a sign of approval that sent a spark of pride through her. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a janitor, but as someone who belonged. Then Sarah's voice sliced through the rhythm. Emily, could you clarify Mr. Liu's point about the timeline? Her tone was polite, but the glint in her eyes was anything but. Emily paused, sensing the trap. Sarah wasn't asking for clarity, she was testing her, probing for weakness in front of everyone. Emily met her gaze, her voice steady. Mr. Liu emphasized that the project must launch within 6 months to align with their market strategy. Is there a specific aspect you'd like me to elaborate on? Sarah's smile tightened, but she waved a hand. No, that's fine. Just making sure we're all on the same page. The room shifted uncomfortably, the Chinese executives exchanging glances. Emily resumed translating, but the air had changed. Sarah's interruption had planted a seed of doubt, a reminder of Emily's unlikely presence. As the meeting progressed, Emily poured herself into the task, weaving cultural nuances into her translations, small gestures of respect that made Mr. Liu's team visibly relax. She explained a technical term with a metaphor about bridge building, earning a chuckle from the delegation. Michael's shoulders loosened, his trust in her growing with every word. But Emily knew Sarah wasn't done. She'd seen this game before. 3 years of watching Sarah undermine colleagues, take credit for others' work, and dismiss anyone who didn't fit her mold. Emily had been invisible then, But she'd heard everything: Sarah's phone calls about cutting corners, her snide comments about diversity hires. Each memory fueled Emily's resolve. She wouldn't let Sarah unravel her now. Midway through the meeting, Sarah leaned forward again, her voice syrupy. "Emily, I'm curious. How did you come to learn Mandarin so well? It's such an unusual skill for someone in your role." The pause was deliberate, a dagger wrapped in velvet. Emily's stomach twisted. Sarah was baiting her, forcing her to acknowledge her job as a janitor in front of the delegation. The Chinese executives looked curious, unaware of the subtext. Michael shot Sarah a warning glance, but she ignored it, her smile unwavering. Emily took a slow breath, her mind racing. She could deflect, play it safe, but something inside her snapped. She was tired of hiding, tired of letting people like Sarah define her. "I learned Mandarin at Georgetown studying East Asian linguistics," she said, her voice even but firm. "Life took me in a different direction, but I've always believed knowledge is never wasted." The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Mr. Liu nodded thoughtfully, but Sarah pressed harder. "That's inspiring. It must be quite a leap, though, from your usual duties to this boardroom." Her tone dripped with condescension, and Emily felt the sting of humiliation, a familiar ache from years of being overlooked. She remembered the night she'd overheard Sarah in the bathroom, ranting about that black girl who thinks she's part of the team. Emily had swallowed the hurt then, but now it fueled her. She met Sarah's gaze, her voice calm but laced with steel. "Every role teaches you something, Sarah. I've learned patience, observation, and how to navigate challenges most people never see." The Chinese executives watched the exchange, their expressions unreadable. Michael cleared his throat, redirecting the conversation to the contract's financial terms. Emily resumed translating, but the damage was there, subtle but real. Sarah had painted her as an outsider, a curiosity rather than a professional. For the rest of the meeting, Emily felt the shift in the room. Less warmth, more scrutiny. She pushed through, her translations flawless, but her chest ached with the weight of being reduced to her uniform. As the delegation prepared to leave, Mr. Liu approached her, speaking quietly in Mandarin. "Your fluency is remarkable, Miss Carter. I look forward to further discussions." His words were kind, but Emily caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes, a question about her place in this world of power suits and corner offices. She nodded, thanking him, but inside, she was burning. Sarah's smug glance as she gathered her papers only stoked the fire. Back in the hallway, Emily returned to her cleaning cart, the boardroom's glass walls reflecting her navy uniform once more. Sarah passed by, her heels clicking. "Nice try, Emily," she said loud enough for a nearby intern to hear. "But let's leave the big deals to the professionals next time." Emily's hands tightened on the cart's handle, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. For 3 years, she'd been invisible, but that invisibility had given her something Sarah could never understand: the power to see through the masks people wore. She'd watched Sarah's every move, her lies to clients, her manipulation of reports, her quiet prejudice. Emily had kept it all locked away, not out of fear, but strategy. As she pushed the cart down the hall, her phone buzzed with a message in Mandarin. It was from Mr. Liu. "Miss Carter, I'd like to meet privately tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Lakeview Cafe. We have a proposal for you." Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just about translation. It was about everything she'd held back, everything she'd learned in the shadows. Sarah thought she'd won, but Emily was just getting started. She'd spent years watching, waiting, and now, the real game was about to begin. The boardroom's glass walls gleamed under the Chicago skyline, but the air inside was thick with unspoken tension. Emily stood at the head of the table, her borrowed blazer a thin shield against the weight of every stare. The Chinese delegation, led by Mr. Liu, listened intently as she translated Michael's opening remarks, her Mandarin flowing with a precision that masked the storm inside her. For 15 minutes, she was flawless, weaving cultural subtleties into every phrase. She caught a smile from Mr. Liu when she likened their partnership to a river finding its course, steady, inevitable, strong. Michael's eyes softened with gratitude, his earlier doubts fading. Emily felt a surge of pride, a rare moment of belonging in a world that had always pushed her to the margins. She was no longer the janitor, she was the bridge holding this $200 million deal together. Then Sarah's voice cut through like a blade. "Emily, perhaps you could share your unique journey with our guests. It's so inspiring how you've reinvented yourself." The words were cloaked in politeness, but their venom was unmistakable. Emily's heart sank, the familiar sting of humiliation rising. Sarah's smile was a predator's, daring her to falter. Michael's jaw tightened, but he didn't intervene. His silence a betrayal Emily felt in her bones. The Chinese executives looked curious, unaware of the undercurrent. Emily's mind raced. She could brush it off, keep translating, but Sarah's words were a calculated strike, meant to strip her bare in front of everyone. For a moment, she was 18 again, dropping out of Georgetown to care for her sick mother, swallowing her dreams to push a cleaning cart. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She straightened, her voice calm but firm. Life has a way of teaching us through unexpected paths. I'm here because I've learned to turn challenges into strengths. Sarah's eyes narrowed, but she pressed on, her tone syrupy. Oh, absolutely. It's just remarkable, isn't it? That someone who was cleaning these very rooms 3 years ago is now at this table. The room froze. Emily felt the Chinese executives' gazes shift, their curiosity turning to discomfort. In their culture, hierarchy was sacred, and Sarah had just painted her as an anomaly, a janitor playing dress-up. Mr. Liu's brow furrowed, his earlier warmth cooling. Emily's chest tightened, but she refused to crumble. She met Sarah's gaze, her voice steady. It shows how this company values talent, no matter where it's found. Diversity isn't just a word here, it's a principle. The lie was bold, but it landed. Michael seized the moment, redirecting to the contract's financials. Let's discuss the investment timeline, he said, his tone clipped. Emily resumed translating, but the ease was gone. The delegation's responses grew shorter, their nods less frequent. She could feel their doubt, their reassessment of her place in this room. For the next half hour, she poured everything into her work, translating with surgical precision, but the damage lingered. Sarah sat back, her satisfaction barely concealed, as if she'd won a game Emily hadn't even known they were playing. As the meeting wrapped, Mr. Liu shook Michael's hand, his tone polite but guarded. We'll review the proposal carefully, he said through Emily. It was diplomatic code for hesitation, a far cry from the enthusiasm they'd shown earlier. The delegation left, and the boardroom emptied, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. Sarah lingered at the door, her voice low. Well, that was interesting. Maybe next time we'll stick to professionals. Emily didn't respond, her hands trembling as she gathered her notepad. The humiliation burned, but it wasn't new. She'd felt it every time Sarah dismissed her, every time an executive looked through her in these halls. 3 years of cleaning these offices had taught her to endure, but it had also taught her to watch. She'd seen Sarah's true face, her lies to clients, her credit stealing, her quiet campaign to keep certain people out of power. Emily had kept it all in her mind, a mental ledger of every misstep. Back in her uniform, pushing her cart through the hallway, Emily felt the weight of the day settle over her. The borrowed blazer was gone, but the fire inside her burned brighter. Sarah thought she'd broken her, but she'd only sharpened her resolve. Emily's phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with Mr. Liu's message from earlier, asking for a private meeting. She reread it, her pulse quickening. This was no accident. During the meeting, she'd noticed Mr. Liu watching her. Not just her words, but her composure, her grace under Sarah's attack. He'd seen something Sarah hadn't. Potential, resilience, a mind that could navigate more than languages. As she mopped the floor, Emily's thoughts drifted to her mother, who'd always said, patience is a weapon, Emily. Use it wisely. She'd spent 3 years being patient, invisible, but that invisibility had given her power. She knew Sarah's secrets, emails left open, hushed phone calls, documents tucked in drawers. Emily had never planned to use them, but Sarah's cruelty had changed the rules. She remembered a night 6 months ago, cleaning Sarah's office, when she'd found a memo about sabotaging a rival company's bid. It was unethical, maybe illegal, and Emily had photographed it, just in case. There were dozens of moments like that, each one a brick in the wall she'd built in silence. She pushed the cart past Sarah's office, where the assistant was laughing with a colleague. Look who's back where she belongs, Sarah said, her voice carrying. Emily kept moving, her face expressionless, but her mind was alive. Sarah thought this was the end, but for Emily it was the beginning. Mr. Liu's proposal wasn't just a job offer. It was a door to a future she'd been preparing for without even realizing it. She'd spent years learning the language of this company, not just Mandarin, but the language of power, ambition, and betrayal. Sarah had tried to humiliate her, but she'd only given Emily the stage to shine. As she clocked out, Emily felt a shift inside her, a clarity that cut through the pain. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person who'd been overlooked, underestimated, pushed aside. Sarah had no idea what was coming, but Emily did. She'd been invisible for too long, and now she was ready to step into the light. Emily pushed her cleaning cart through the quiet hallways of Bennett Enterprises, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows across the polished floors. The sting of Sarah's words from the boardroom lingered, but it was no longer just pain, it was fuel. For 3 years, Emily had been a ghost in these corridors, her navy uniform rendering her invisible to the executives who shaped fortunes. But invisibility, she now realized, was her greatest weapon. Every night spent wiping down desks, every overheard conversation, every carelessly discarded document had built a vault of knowledge inside her. She wasn't just a janitor, she was a keeper of secrets, and Sarah's secrets were the most dangerous of all. As she mopped the executive lounge, her mind replayed the day's events. Mr. Liu's message, asking for a private meeting, burned in her thoughts. It wasn't just about her Mandarin or her poise in the boardroom. He'd seen her withstand Sarah's venom without flinching, and that had intrigued him. Emily's heart raced at the possibilities, but she tempered her hope with caution. She'd learned long ago that opportunities could vanish as quickly as they appeared. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, "Patience, Emily. Let the world underestimate you, and then show them who you are." She'd been patient, but the time for waiting was over. In her small apartment in Hyde Park that night, Emily sat at her kitchen table, a single lamp illuminating her laptop. The file she opened was titled Bennett Records. But it was more than a file. It was a reckoning. For 2 years, she'd documented everything she'd seen and heard while cleaning. It wasn't revenge that drove her, it was survival. She'd known, even back then, that knowledge was power in a world that tried to keep people like her small. The screen glowed with scanned images of memos, screenshots of emails, and notes from overheard calls. One entry stood out, a photo of a document Sarah had hidden in her desk's bottom drawer, outlining a plan to inflate costs on a project led by a Black-owned firm, forcing its cancellation. Emily had found it late one night, the office empty except for the hum of her vacuum. She'd hesitated before snapping the picture, her hands shaking, but something told her to keep it. There were other entries, dozens of them. Sarah's email to a client, leaking a competitor's bid, a recorded call where she'd laughed about blocking a Latino manager's promotion, calling him too ethnic for the boardroom. Each piece was a thread in a tapestry of deceit, woven over years of arrogance. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her breath steady but heavy. She'd never planned to use this file, but Sarah's attack in the boardroom had changed everything. It wasn't just about humiliation, it was about power, about keeping Emily in her place. But Emily had been watching, learning, and now she held the keys to Sarah's undoing. Her thoughts drifted to her years at Georgetown, where she'd studied not just languages but the art of strategy, how empires rose and fell on the smallest details. Cleaning these offices had been its own education. She'd listened as executives debated deals, watched Sarah manipulate reports to impress Michael, seen her take credit for a junior analyst's work before he was quietly let go. Emily had absorbed it all, her silence mistaken for ignorance. She remembered a night a year ago, cleaning Sarah's office, when she'd overheard a hushed call. "Tell them the numbers are fine," Sarah had whispered. "No one checks the fine print." Emily had paused, her mop still, and jotted down the client's name. Later, she'd found a discrepancy in the contract's margins, buried in a file Sarah thought was secure. It was unethical, possibly illegal, and Emily had saved it. As she scrolled through her file, Emily felt a strange calm. This wasn't about anger, it was about justice. Sarah had built her career on stepping over others, but Emily had built something stronger. A mind that saw through the cracks in the facade. She closed the laptop, her decision made. Tomorrow's meeting with Mr. Liu wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to rewrite her story. But she wouldn't walk in empty-handed. She'd bring her skills, her dignity, and, if needed, the truth about Bennett Enterprises. The next morning, Emily arrived at the Lakeview Cafe, her simple gray dress a quiet statement of confidence. Mr. Liu was already there, seated with a woman in a sharp blazer who introduced herself as Karen Chen, vice president of their company's U.S. operations. "Ms. Carter," Mr. Liu said in Mandarin, "your composure yesterday was remarkable." Not many could handle such pressure with grace. Emily nodded, her pulse steady. "I've had practice," she said, her tone light but firm. Karen leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "We're expanding in North America, and we need someone who understands both our culture and this market. Someone who sees what others miss." Emily's mind flashed to her file, to the secrets she'd carried for years. She didn't mention it, but the weight of it gave her confidence. They talked for an hour about market strategies, cultural nuances, and the unspoken rules of American business. Emily spoke with a clarity that surprised even herself, drawing on years of listening to Bennett's deals. When Karen slid a business card across the table, Emily read the title Carter Consulting Group. The salary was 5 times her current pay. "Consider our offer, Mr. Liu said. "But we have a condition. We need help investigating discrepancies in Bennett Enterprises contracts. Some practices may violate trade regulations." Emily's breath caught. They knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to suspect. She nodded, her mind already mapping the next steps. As she left the cafe, her phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. The Chinese have raised concerns about our contracts. Your presence is requested." Emily's lips curved into a faint smile. Sarah thought she'd buried her in that boardroom, but she'd only given her a stage. For 3 years, Emily had been invisible, but now she saw everything. Every lie, every weakness, every crack in the empire Sarah had helped build. She'd spent those years preparing, not for revenge, but for this moment. The meeting tomorrow wasn't just about saving a deal. It was about claiming the future she'd earned. As she walked through Chicago's bustling streets, Emily felt a shift inside her. The weight of her secrets wasn't a burden anymore, it was power. Sarah had tried to break her, but she'd only forged a strategist, one who knew that the most dangerous weapon wasn't a raised voice or a corner office. It was the truth held quietly until the perfect moment to strike. The boardroom at Bennett Enterprises buzzed with a tension so thick it seemed to cling to the glass walls. Emily sat at the polished table, her gray suit, bought with the advance from Mr. Liu's company, fitting her like a second skin. Her laptop rested in front of her, a quiet promise of the truth she'd carried for years. Across the table, Sarah adjusted her red blazer, her confident smile masking the unease in her eyes. The 7 board members, their faces grim, waited for Michael to speak. He stood at the head of the table, his voice steady but heavy. "The Chinese delegation has raised serious concerns about our contract practices," he said. "They've hinted at a federal investigation. We're here to get answers." Emily's pulse was calm, her hands steady. She'd spent 3 years invisible, but now every eye was on her. Sarah leaned forward, her tone sharp. "I assume we're addressing yesterday's disaster. Putting an unqualified employee in a $200 million negotiation was reckless, and now we're paying the price." Her words were a calculated jab, pinning the blame on Emily. The board members shifted, their murmurs low. Emily met Sarah's gaze, unflinching. She'd expected this. Sarah's playbook was predictable, always deflecting, always attacking. Michael raised a hand, his patience thin. The delegation specifically requested Emily's presence to clarify their concerns. "Let's hear her out." Sarah's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "With all due respect, Michael, I don't see why a janitor should be at an executive meeting." Her voice dripped with disdain, and a few board members nodded, their discomfort clear. Emily opened her laptop, her movements deliberate. "Mr. Liu approached me yesterday with questions about our contracting practices," she said, her voice clear and even. "They've uncovered evidence of bid rigging and sabotage against competitors." The room went still. Sarah laughed, sharp and forced. "That's absurd. What evidence could you possibly have?" Emily's eyes locked onto Sarah's, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of fear in the assistant's face. "The kind of evidence you collect when people assume you're not listening," Emily said. "When they think you're just part of the furniture." She connected her laptop to the projector, and the screen lit up with an email from Sarah to a client, dated 8 months ago. "This email to Horizon Tech contains confidential details about a rival's bid," she said. The board leaned forward, their expressions darkening. Sarah's face paled, but she stood, her voice rising. "This is a setup. She's fabricating evidence to save herself." Emily didn't flinch. She clicked to the next slide. A spreadsheet showing inflated costs on a project led by a Black-owned firm, canceled under Sarah's orders. "This document shows how Sarah manipulated budgets to undermine minority-led projects," she said. Then came a recording, captured by the company's security system. Sarah's voice filled the room. "We can't let these people think they belong in our boardroom. It's about standards." The board gasped, their shock palpable. Emily kept going, her voice steady but laced with quiet fury. "This call, from 2 weeks ago, shows Sarah instructing the receptionist to lose resumes with names that sounded too ethnic." A board member, Mr. Thompson, a gray-haired man with decades at the company, leaned forward, his face hard. "Sarah, is this true?" Sarah stammered, sweat beading on her forehead. It's taken out of context. You don't understand the pressure I'm under to protect this company. Emily's final slide appeared. A memo outlining Sarah's plan to sabotage a competitor's deal, the same one Emily had photographed in her office a year ago. This violates federal trade laws, Emily said. Mr. Liu's team found similar discrepancies, which is why they're considering a formal complaint. Sarah's hands shook as she gripped the table. You're nothing but a resentful cleaning lady. She spat. This is revenge because I told the truth about you. Michael's voice cut through, cold and final. You have 30 seconds to explain why you shouldn't be fired and reported to the authorities. Sarah looked around, searching for an ally, but found only stony faces. You're making a mistake, she whispered, her voice breaking. She's nobody. Michael didn't waver. She's our new director of international relations. You're fired. The silence was absolute. Sarah stood swaying as security entered to escort her out. She shot Emily a venomous look. You may have won today, but you're still what you've always been. Emily met her gaze, her voice soft but piercing. I'm exactly who I've always been, someone who watches, learns, and acts when the time is right. The difference is, now I'm where I belong. As Sarah was led away, the board erupted in hushed discussion. Mr. Thompson approached Emily, his voice low. That took courage, Miss Carter. We owe you an apology and a debt. Michael called the meeting to a close, but not before announcing Emily's new role. The Chinese delegation has agreed to revisit the deal, he said, thanks to Emily's insights. She'll lead our negotiations moving forward. As the boardroom cleared, Emily stayed behind, her eyes on the Chicago skyline. The weight of the moment settled over her, not just victory, but the cost of it. She'd exposed Sarah's lies, but she'd also bared her own scars, the years of being unseen, unheard. It wasn't just about Sarah, it was about every door slammed in her face, every assumption that she didn't belong. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Liu. We look forward to working with you, Miss Carter. Your integrity is rare. She smiled, but it was bittersweet. She'd won, but the fight had left marks. 3 years of silence had built her into a strategist, but they'd also taught her the loneliness of carrying truth alone. As she packed her laptop, Michael approached, his expression heavy. How did you do it? All that evidence, those years of watching. Emily's voice was quiet. When people treat you like you're invisible, they forget you have eyes. Sarah underestimated what silence can build. He nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. You've changed this company, Emily. And I suspect you're just getting started. She left the boardroom, her steps light but deliberate. The victory was hers, but it wasn't enough. She wasn't here to tear down Sarah. She was here to build something greater, something that would outlast every slight, every doubt. The truth had set her free, but it was her future that would define her. Tomorrow, she'd meet Mr. Liu again, not as a janitor or a translator, but as a leader. For the first time in years, Emily felt the weight of her own power, and it was heavier and more beautiful than she'd ever imagined. 6 months had passed since the boardroom showdown, and Emily Carter sat in her new office on the 38th floor of Bennett Enterprises, the Chicago skyline stretching beyond her window. Her glass desk was covered with contracts in Mandarin, English, and Korean, each one a testament to the $400 million in deals she'd secured for the company. Her navy blazer, now tailored and chosen by her, hung on the chair. She was no longer the invisible janitor, but a force reshaping the company's future. Her assistant, Jennifer, poked her head in. The South Korean delegation is here, Miss Carter. They're excited to meet the woman who tripled our Asian market share. Emily nodded, adjusting her notes. She'd become a name in Chicago's business circles. Her story whispered in boardrooms and featured in magazines. Business Insider called her the translator who redefined global trade. Yet, as she prepared for the meeting, her mind drifted to the woman who'd once pushed a cleaning cart through these halls. That woman was still inside her, watching, learning, ensuring she'd never be underestimated again. Across town, Sarah sat in a cramped Queens apartment, the remnants of her old life scattered on a coffee table. Unpaid therapy bills, rejection letters from firms that wouldn't touch her. The federal investigation into her actions at Bennett had ended with a $57,000 fine and a 5-year ban from executive roles. Her name was poison in the industry, her fall cemented by a New York Times expose on toxic leadership. That morning, she'd seen Emily's face on a Forbes cover, smiling alongside Asian CEOs, the headline proclaiming, "From shadows to power, the rise of Emily Carter." The irony twisted in her gut. Sarah had tried to break Emily, but she'd only built her. Back at Bennett, Emily walked into the boardroom. the South Korean executives rising to greet her. Her Mandarin had opened doors, but it was her strategic mind, honed by years of silent observation, that sealed the deals. She spoke with ease, weaving cultural insights into discussions about market expansion. The room listened, not out of obligation but respect. Mr. Park, the delegation's leader, leaned forward. Miss Carter, your understanding of our priorities is unmatched. We're ready to sign. As they shook hands, Emily felt a quiet pride. This was her place now, earned through grit and truth. Her success wasn't just personal, it was a beacon for others. She'd launched a mentorship program at Bennett, guiding 5 employees from operational roles into leadership tracks. One, a young black woman from accounting, had just pitched her first project to the board. Emily saw herself in her, hungry, overlooked, but unstoppable. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mother, now healthy thanks to Emily's $300,000 salary and the best diabetes care money could buy. Saw you on TV, honey. You made us proud. Emily smiled, remembering her mother's words, patience is power. She'd used that power to finish her master's at Northwestern, her diploma now framed in her office. Her life had transformed, but the scars of her past remained, reminders of the cost of being seen. At a board meeting that afternoon, Michael stood to address the room. Emily Carter didn't just save our $200 million deal, he said. She's opened markets we never dreamed of. Profits are up 30% and our reputation in Asia is unmatched. The room applauded, but Emily's eyes caught Mr. Thompson's, the board member who'd first thanked her after Sarah's fall. He gave her a nod, a silent acknowledgement of her journey. Later, Emily visited her old alma mater, DePaul University, to launch her second chance scholarship. The auditorium was packed with 500 students, their faces a mix of hope and struggle. No one should choose between family and dreams, she told them, her voice steady but warm. Her program, funded partly by her own earnings, had awarded 25 full scholarships to low-income students who'd had to pause their studies. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, and Emily felt a lump in her throat. Not just contracts, but lives changed. That night, in her renovated Lakeview apartment, Emily sipped tea, the city light sparkling outside. A news alert pinned Sarah had filed for bankruptcy. Emily felt no joy, only a quiet sadness. Sarah's downfall wasn't her victory, her own rise was. She'd chosen to expose Sarah's professional wrongs, not her personal ones, because destruction wasn't her goal. Building was. Her phone rang. Karen Chen, from Mr. Liu's company. We're expanding into Europe, Karen said. We want you to lead it. Emily paused, the weight of the offer sinking in. She wasn't just a director now, she was a global player. I'll consider it, she said, her voice calm but alive with possibility. As she hung up, Emily thought of Sarah's final words. You're still what you've always been. She was right, but not in the way Sarah meant. Emily was still the woman who watched, learned, and acted with precision. The difference was the world saw her now, not as a janitor, but as a leader who'd turned invisibility into power. Her story wasn't about revenge, it was about resilience, about proving that talent and dignity could outshine any prejudice. She'd shown Bennett and the world that the most dangerous people were the ones who listened in silence, waiting for their moment to shine. The city hummed outside Emily's window, its rhythm a reminder of how far she'd come. She stood looking at the skyline, her reflection faint in the glass. 3 years ago, she'd been a shadow in these towers, her dreams buried under the weight of necessity. Now she was shaping the future, not just hers, but others. The pain of Sarah's cruelty, the loneliness of her invisible years, had forged something unbreakable inside her. She didn't hate Sarah, she pitied her. Sarah's world had been built on tearing others down, but Emily's was built on lifting them up. Her scholarships, her mentorships, her deals, they were proof that true power didn't come from titles or corner offices. It came from seeing potential where others saw none, from turning scars into stars. As she turned off the light, Emily felt a peace she hadn't known before. The past was done, the future hers to write. She'd learned that the quietest voices could echo the loudest, that patience could move mountains. Her story wasn't over, it was just beginning, and it would inspire others to find their own light, no matter how deep the shadows.